Welcome, everybody, to the Foster and Friends Show with your host, Brent Foster. I've got co-host Tom Marquell in the background. We've got Mr. Matt Zappasodi. He's an Indy PodLab managing partner. He does tech stuff and construction. If you were to see this, he's like putting something up right now. Producer Erick Tidwell is in the house. We couldn't do it without him and all his expertise, so thank you, Erick. I'm going to drop a little plug here. This Foster and Friends episode is brought to you by Indy PodLab. Indy PodLab is a podcasting and vlogging studio with up to full-service production capabilities from small time to big time. Let our studio meet your needs. The reason my partners and I created Indy PodLab was to offer high-quality audio and video capabilities where you can share your brand, amplify your voice, and tell your story. To book your session or learn more, please visit www.indypodlab.com and send us a note. We'd love to hear from you. Finally, we've got a special guest on Foster and Friends right here to my left, Mr. Mitch Stevens. Mitch and I have been friends for a couple of years now. I first met Mitch in the backyard of my next door neighbor, Tony and Julie Avliana. Hopefully I said that right. He corrected me on that. Did I do it?
You got it.
Yes. Nailed it.
Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Dubbed Cigar Tony as well, and I've referenced him on previous podcasts, so love Tony and Julie. Shout out to you guys. We hit it off as both of us are authors, love baseball, and we connected on a space we both are passionate about, which is Transcending Labels, which is the title of Mitch's new book, which we'll cover shortly. But before we dive into that, Mitch, I always want to give something to my guests on Foster and Friends, and what you can see in front of us is Sun King beer. This is for you, my man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Indiana Brew.
Brew. Sun King Brewery is an Indianapolis-based craft brewery with a focus on continually creating traditional, seasonal, and unique specialty beers. Sun King rolled out its first keg of beer out the door July 2009, and since that time has grown into one of Indiana's largest and most award-winning breweries with multiple medals at the Great American Beer Festival as well as the World Beer Cup. Now available on tap and in cans throughout Indiana, Illinois, and Florida, Sun King has grown into the second largest beer brewer in the state of Indiana. The company's commitment to handcrafted seasonal and specialty beers has been rewarded with multiple medals, again, at the Indiana Brewers Cup, Great American Beer Festival, the World Beer Cup competitions. Osiris is my favorite, which is right here. Amazing. And then the cream ale is great too. I know you're a fan of the cream ale, but here you go, Absolutely. My friend. And as always, drink responsibly. Okay, enough about that. Let's learn more about Mitch Stevens. Here's a quick bio I put together. Mitch Stevens is a Cincinnati native, now living here in Indianapolis with his wife, Maria. He was a special education major at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and now works in sales with Axiom Human Resources Solutions. Mitch's passion for working with special needs and disabled communities started with an introduction to an after-school program at his high school. From there, he began to volunteer at events and spend more time with a couple of individuals with special needs in his hometown. He has benefited immensely from his connection to these communities. Ergo, his new book, Transcending Labels, The Power of Connecting with the Special Needs and Disabled Communities. So, Mitch, welcome to the Foster and Friends Show. Please tell us about your book. Why did you write it? And tell us the story behind that.
Yeah, so thank you guys both for having me, first of all. And
not at all, man. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on it a little bit there, Brent, but back in high school, Turpin High School in Cincinnati is where I went, and it was my junior year. On our basketball team, one of my buddies, he would attend that after school club. It was coined Chillin' Chums. That was the group, and they would meet. I want to say 1 or 2 times a month after school and just do different fun activities. And he was like egging me on. He's like, dude, you got to come, one of these times. It's so much fun. And I went, and I talk about this in the book a little bit, but I was nervous about how to interact with people with special needs, people with disabilities, and going in with all of these different peers of mine that had been tutors. They had worked with these kids before. How is this going to go? How are they going to perceive me? And I walked out of that room feeling like $1 million. It was amazing. So awesome. That was really the start of it.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about some of the folks that you are referencing.
Yeah. So really, when I went into that room, it was my experience with someone with special needs was really just with a couple students that I had met that had Down syndrome. And then I went into this classroom and it was wide ranging. It was, there were 5 or 6 students in there with varying levels of autism. There were varying levels of cognitive as well as behavioral, issues that were going on within that room. So it was really, really all over the board. And one of the main reasons for writing the book for me is, yes, the positives that I gained from, interacting with them, but also just trying to bring some more awareness around this topic to some of the misconceptions I think people have. One is that it's going to be really challenging to connect with people with special needs or disabilities. I found that it was very easy as soon as I was there, because they were the ones that were welcoming and trying to bring me in, and they just immediately were looking at me as like, oh wow, he's new to the group, he's my friend now, right away. Yeah. And it's such a simple concept that we could bring into all of our relationships, but that was a huge takeaway, and I want to try to shine the light on that for people that maybe don't have as much experience with it.
Yeah. Have you visited like Janus Developmental Services up north of here in like Noblesville, Indiana yet?
I have not. I met somebody from Janus or that it was actually at the Taste of Business.
Nice. Awesome. Yes. Awesome. And, it speaks perfectly to what you just mentioned, that everybody has these preconceived notions like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to connect with them, or there's this social dilemma that we all have, but we're all human. Right. And it doesn't matter, chromosomes or what's wrong or the mental stabilities or anything outside of that. Intelligence levels, those go out of the window when we just come back down to the place where we realize you're flesh and blood, I'm flesh and blood. That's all that really matters. And it's amazing to me, like whenever I walk into Janus, or they run the coffee shop down below the Hamilton County Courthouse for the staff. And it's just fantastic. You feel so welcome, you're so at home, and all of that preconceived, how am I going to, what's going to happen here? It just flies out the window, and you're like, man, God, if only everybody was as nice as you all are. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the people that know me know that my older brother is deaf. He's 2 years older than me, and I grew up in Oregon with my family, and at a very young age, I learned how to sign. And this was before ASL, so most of the sign language that I know is ESL, so it's not the standardized version of American Sign Language, which is kind of a truncated way of communicating in sign language, whereas English is meant to be, yes, Jesus, that's a good one. Yeah, the Holy Spirit. So
that's all I know.
It's meant to, that's awesome. It's meant to be like you read. So you read left to right, and the subject verb agreements are in proper order so that the deaf community can actually properly learn how to read. Otherwise, it's really difficult for them to do that. But there is so much about my experience growing up with an older brother who is deaf, and I love him tremendously, and he's just an amazing individual. And this is back before interpreters. He was also an athlete, so growing up, he and I did everything together. I was his interpreter a lot, even at playing football. School didn't have interpreters at practice. Coaches would call me out of practice to go sign to my brother. But what was really awesome about my parents and the way that they approached his education and his upbringing is, one, they spent 18 years of speech therapy for him, and he's completely deaf, mind you. There's no hearing at all. So he had to learn how to talk. He had to learn how to read lips. We had TDYs and systems, phone systems. We had a dogs for the deaf dog, or that would actually, hey, Kelly, go get Brad, and then she would go get him and then bring him to me. And the phone, we had lights instead of the phone would ring, but we also had lights in the house. And that whole experience shaped my life, my sister's life, our whole family's life in a different way. But the top thing I would say is my parents did not, and they never did, treat him any different than anybody else. Yep. And that empowered him to grow into the man that he is today, a father of 4 kids, and just a leader wherever he is. And that's my big takeaway. And I never liked it when people would make fun of him, and B, treat him differently than a regular human being. And so I got to see the worst of that in his defense a lot, and as his interpreter and someone who could hear what was going on. And then also I saw the best of it, where I saw great human beings that cared about other people, who were very empathetic. Like, you go to the store, instead of somebody having a fit over him being deaf and trying to communicate, not being able to understand what he says, but then not being able to communicate with him back, like learning what is he trying to say, and then he can't even hear me. They would write down, and they would actually grab a piece of paper and start writing and share, like, okay, what is it that you want, and things like that. And you saw the greatness in humanity that way. Mm-hmm. But I think a big credit is just not treating him any different, treating him like a human being. And that's what he was looking for. And that's what, how a lot of people treat him, and they just love him today. The ones that have seen him grow up and be the man that he is. So it's really cool. Well, I wanted to share that.
Oh yeah.
And we connect on that. And that's,
And you just think, I think a lot of the apprehension that a lot of people have when they find themselves in a situation is because there is a huge lack of exposure to individuals with special needs. Mm-hmm. And it becomes this very off in the distance thing that nobody really knows how to handle the situations. They expect something a certain way, but then when they actually expose themselves to it, they get involved in some capacity, like you've done, all of a sudden, all of those apprehensions and everything, that just fades away. And then you're able to communicate effectively. You're able to overcome those little barriers that do exist, because there are real barriers that do exist for many who have disabilities. The more you're around it, the easier it gets.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, Tom, of the exposure to people with special needs and disabilities, he has become one of my best friends now. He was our manager for our basketball team.
Oh, awesome.
My senior year. He has Down syndrome. He's an incredible person. Mm-hmm. And when I was speaking with his parents for this book, his dad talked about the concept of, when they were growing up, it wasn't just that there wasn't very much exposure. It was literally that within their schools, they were completely separated. Yeah. So there was no exposure. So we have come a long way in that regard. Yeah. But at the same time, there's still there's so much room for opportunity and room for growth in that area too. So
yeah. And you wonder, if we continue on the route where, it's kind of headed that way now, where now high schools, you have student aids and things of that nature, which are getting a little more exposure, but there's such a need in the education institutions that we have for special needs teachers. If we were to enhance that exposure even further, and people, like yourself, who have a passion for helping individuals with special needs and disabilities, we're able to understand that, yes, that is a need. How many would we have that need today? If we could back it up 10 years and redo it, and we exposed individuals to it, are they going to be able to discover that passion that they have earlier, be able to get on that track to a, special education major or things of that nature, to then, go forward and actually fill the need that we currently have?
Yeah, and so much of the book for me is around how to get involved and how to treat people with special needs and or disabilities. So I even mentioned in there that it's not I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of what's wrong with the teaching profession or anything like that. But I was a special education major, and I think another part of it is it's very challenging for those individuals that decide to pursue that.
Oh yeah,
and the level of compensation for what they are doing, it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter how passionate you are.
Don't get me started. We'll start comparing compensation rates in Finland and everywhere else. It's like, oh, well,
So, and I don't expand on that too much. And I don't want to, go down that path too much, but it is worth at least noting that it's just, it's not quite fair entirely.
Yeah,
we'll put it that way.
Yeah, and I would just add, like, even across education in general and healthcare in general, like it just seems like it's a lower priority than other professions, and it ought not be, because our culture and society would be much better if we would invest in those areas. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. So what advice would you give somebody that, I grew up with someone that had, a hearing disability and stuff, but what would you say to our audience, those who are listening, that don't know how to approach somebody that maybe, they know of in the community or somewhere, they come across somebody at a store or a friend group or whatever, just like what advice would you give them to approach somebody? And we'll just kind of have that dialogue. I think it's important, because a lot of people probably are wondering, like, how do I even engage somebody?
Yeah, sure. So I think from hearing you shared your experience with your brother, and from talking with, Robert is the guy I was talking about, manager for my basketball team. I talked with his older brother for the book as well. And the key thing that we kept coming back to was the increased level of empathy that they have for all people. Amen. Having that experience, growing up with someone in your family, right?
100%. Like, if you don't have, I don't know how you can't have empathy when you grow up in that environment. Like,
right.
Because, and if you don't, that's what I'm trying to draw out a little bit, is like, people, like, I've seen over my life a lot of people not treat people with disabilities very well. And you and I talked about this. It's low empathy for that group of people, right? Is that
exactly where I was going, where it's just, so trying to have a little bit more patience. And it's kind of what we let off with, where you can take all these very simple concepts and just apply them to everybody that you interact with.
Exactly.
It doesn't just, but especially
human beings.
I think we can all have more empathy.
And it's like, it's something I want to try to be careful with too. And I hope it doesn't, at any point throughout, promoting this book and different things come across this way. It's like, I am, like all human beings, a constant work in progress in these areas. I don't mean to sit on the pedestal and be like, be a better person, because no. It's more that, like, interacting with these people with special needs, disabilities, seeing their genuine heart for other people and how it comes so naturally, it's infectious. So one thing that I do recommend is just, like, it's kind of the try it out once and fill in the blank. So if it's a middle school student or a high school student, I talked about with a past teacher that I met with, your heart really has to be in it if you're going to be volunteering consistently, or if you're going to be a teacher aide or whatever. So she was suggesting, don't do it just because maybe you happen to read a section of this book or you hear it's something that you're supposed to do, but try it out and see, right? Yeah. So for people interacting with people in special needs community in general, just put yourself out there once and see what happens. I bet it's going to be a positive experience. If it's not, and you realize, this isn't for me, that's okay too. Then you can just default to, being more understanding of, like you said with your brother, maybe it takes a little more time to do something or to understand him. Right. Just kind of going in with that empathy.
I like that. That's awesome. I love that. Tom, do you have a question at all?
Sure. So we kind of touched a little bit on the backstory. So right now, what do you see overall within our society today as what's the gap or the need, or what is actually really missing for individuals to really, get engaged and do the right thing with special needs and people with disabilities?
Yeah. So I think one gap or where people can start is by having a focus on your own strengths and your own capabilities versus limitations.
Yeah.
And it's funny, as I was kind of preparing some thoughts for meeting with you guys, I was listening to a podcast that you would think would be completely unrelated. And the woman that was getting interviewed on there was talking about how, treating other people the right way and focusing on their strengths and their capabilities. She was talking about this same topic and going back to, you got to, we beat ourselves up too much, right? Yep. You got to focus on your own strength, talk to yourself in a way that's, uplifting. And then you're able to give that. It's a cliche for a reason, right? Of like, you can only give what you have, essentially. And then today I was at a different, a work meeting where a guy was giving a message. Same exact thing came up of, just kind of starting with focus on your own strengths. You're not being arrogant or conceited to think highly of yourself and have confidence. Yep. And I think that can be a trickle-down effect to then anybody that you interact with, especially those with, special needs and disabilities. Then you can a lot more easily identify their strengths and treat them in a way that's going to build their dignity, which is, I think, similar to what you're talking about with your brother.
Exactly.
Well, how your parents approached it.
Well, it's like whatever we expose ourselves to on a regular basis, we inevitably begin to adapt the behaviors that match what we're exposed to. So if we're continually beating ourselves up about, all the mistakes that we've made or how we, reacted to the guy who cut us off in traffic on the way down here, I mean, we can get in those downward cycles, but then what that does is when we do interact with others, it becomes negative. When we're having conversations with our spouses or we're talking to our kids, all of a sudden, we're pointing out the negatives all the time. And then that is encompassed by an ever increasingly negative news cycle and the negativity that surrounds us on a daily basis. And we just got to break the spiral. Yeah. And it starts in our minds, and then from our minds and what we allow in, we're able to then mirror that out into the rest of the world.
That's right.
Yeah. And one other thing I would add on that question too, nice, is, with us coming a long way, I think, as a society from completely separating people with, special needs and disabilities to it being more, there's more inclusion now, is the evolution of the R word. The fact that it's even said that way, I think, is major progress.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still in situations where, social situations or friends or whatever, they say that, and there's varying opinions on it. Even, Robert's brother, he's like, I talked to him about it. He's like, it doesn't really bother me if someone doesn't mean it the wrong way. And I think people do get offended too easily these days in general. Yeah. But I also think that's one thing I would point to as a gap, is if you hear, people throwing that around, like that's your go-to, word to say something's bad or stupid. That's the replacing that. And it's like, that one really doesn't sit well with me. I'm not going to, if somebody says that, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about it. But my good friends know that that's not something I want to hear. So I think that's an area we can improve. So
no, I agree with you on that. Like if I were to hear stuff like that from someone, I'm usually, you can ask my wife, somebody that'll be like, hey, don't say that. That's not cool, man.
Well, Brent's like 6 foot everything, and
he's a little more imposing than I am. Yeah,
he could flip this whole table over with like his pinky.
So I do get I'll call you out, but at the same time, though, it's a great thing to mention because people need to understand and be sensitive to of language and the evolution of language. And you probably shouldn't use certain language these days because we are understanding things a little bit differently and how it might affect people. Yeah. So,
and it's amazing how like back in like the 70s, 60s, 50s and on, I mean, that was a medical term.
Right.
And that was just the standard. Yeah. But it's just,
yeah.
And it is what it is.
Yeah. But. So like the example I have like for my brother, and I say that he's deaf. It's the deaf community. These days, to your point about being a little bit too sensitive, it's like, well, that's still an accepted term, but at the same time, we're hard of hearing, right? Yeah. Or don't put me in that box or that label, and that's not the intention. It's just a definition. So for me growing up, and that's what even that group uses, it's kind of like, well, I need to try to make sure that I'm mindful and thoughtful about how I'm applying that, because not everyone is completely deaf or have no hearing. And it might be easier to say, in slang than it would be in writing and things like that. So I have to kind of be mindful of the way that I'm using that word, because I don't want to offend my brother or his group and that type of thing. And in that community, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think generally speaking, we can all use, common sense where, if you said the deaf community and we're hearing the context around it and everything,
that's different.
If someone's getting upset and saying it should be hard of hearing, I can't believe you said that. It's like, there's nuance to it, I think, for sure. But one example I think of is, I know we both follow baseball closely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Forever it was, if someone got hurt,
Erick,
they're
like,
Braves,
lucky
Braves
A's and Reds.
Reds, yeah.
Yeah, Tom, what are you?
Cubs.
Cubbies.
Okay, Cubs and Reds.
All right, we're all at war with each other.
Yeah, exactly. But forever, somebody gets hurt and they go on the disabled list. And as important as this topic is to me and this community, they switched it to the injured list because people were mad it's the disabled list. And I think that is like a little bit over the top, where it's like, I don't think that these communities care what baseball terms are being used. Yeah. Like that, but
Good point.
But like you said,
we're just
it goes back
hairs
being
at this point.
Yeah. It just goes back to being mindful and doing your best to be respectful to anybody that might be impacted.
Well, gotcha. It comes back to, what you said, common sense and just being a responsible adult. At least those of us in the room, we can bear those titles.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world, we'll get there. We're getting there little by little. Yeah. Little by little.
I love
it. It just comes back to, in my mind, treat people like you would like to be treated. I mean, that's the golden rule. That's how we should behave. And we're all human. So we all have stuff.
Yeah.
It's no big deal.
Yeah. Do you, in the book, do you talk about any resources? Do you talk about, or do you have any, if you didn't talk about it in the book, do you have any resources that are good for people if they're wanting to learn more about, engaging with, say, some of the groups that you've been engaged with?
So one thing that I share is, I met with basically the teacher that oversaw the special education department at my high school, and she was talking about social media being a very valuable resource specifically for parents. So that's one that I highlight. There's a woman that's on Instagram that has gained a pretty big following, and I believe it's Finding Cooper's Voice on Instagram. And it's her son has autism. He might be 12 or 13 years old at this point. And so she does a really good job of kind of documenting just what it's like as a parent and navigating this thing that is just, it's incredibly challenging. So that's one. I would hope that just the conversations with siblings, parents, teacher, can be a good resource for people, because there's some really good suggestions from those people that have like the hands-on experience.
Right.
Those would be some of the main ones.
Yeah. Do you feel that like ADA compliance has gotten a lot better and adoption from ADA implementation, whether it's at stadiums and like public places? Is that at a good place, or do you think there's a long way to go there? Or no opinion?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I would consider myself knowledgeable enough to make because when I think about it, it's like there's definitely been some glaring situations where I've noticed like, oh wow, there's no wheelchair access, or there's no this or that, but I couldn't like quantify it. It's more just a feeling. So
sure. I know that technology plays a role in the integration of people with special needs into our culture, all the more into like mainstream, where I feel like everybody has a disability to some degree, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
100%. Someday I'm not going to be able to hear, but I can sign. And so my wife will be like talking to me and I won't be able to hear her. So I'll just be signing, and she's got to learn. She's learning sign language. My daughters are learning sign language, but I I love that the advancements of technology. I talk a lot with my brother who works for the federal government on Teams. And even though I don't use Teams like any other way,
I don't like Teams.
I don't like Teams either, but you know what? It's the easiest way for him and I to just jump on, chat, boom, he pops up. He's on West Coast time, so it's a 3-hour difference. It's really, really cool to do it that way. And he types way faster than anyone on the planet. That guy is flying, and so he's challenged me to have to keep up, but our conversations go really well. And I just love the fact that we can do that and connect. You got texting, you've got, sometimes we'll do a FaceTime and then we sign to each other. Mm-hmm. So we'll do that as well. And I just have seen how awesome the technology is these days with smartphones and programs like Teams and Zoom calls and stuff. I feel like that's really cool. Also, this podcast we put out on YouTube, which then does the translation automatically, which, you know, thanks Google, thanks YouTube for doing that, because you're reaching a community that otherwise, you know, they'd be having to look at us, try to read our lips, closed caption or whatnot.
They're then they can't see our lips because the microphone's in the way. Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So I just love that. And do you have any thoughts or opinions about technology and the adoption and how that plays into what you're doing?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, I would say with Robert, we do FaceTimes now about once a month, somewhere in there to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And
does he like it?
He does. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I hope so. I think he gets excited about it. Just that I'm reaching out and we're getting to connect.
Yeah.
And that really started because, and this is another theme I try to touch on in the book, is scheduling time to stay in touch with people that matter in your life, because it's so easy. I know I'm young in the grand scheme of things, but as soon as you get out of high school and then college, like it happens really quick where you start losing touch with people.
Yeah.
So that's a theme in there. But with Robert, I would try to call him and you know, connect with him, and it just takes him longer to process his thoughts. So the call is longer. So being on FaceTime, it's way easier to sit there and we're just hanging out versus I'm waiting on the other end of the phone. I even said to his brother, Tim, because when we were talking for this book, you know, a year and a half ago now, I was like, you know, I want to ask you about something. I know Rob likes me, I think. But I'm like, when we've been friends for a long time. Yeah. I'm like, when I call him, it seems like he just doesn't want to talk to me. And he's like, he gave me a bunch of good advice around that. And one really good suggestion he gave was he's like, just ask a question and wait like way longer than you would think it would take somebody to formulate their thoughts. And that made a massive difference where he's coming back with some profound answers now that I just give him a chance to talk. And then the other part of it is going in with topics ahead of time. Okay. So if you have a friend or family member with special needs, I would highly recommend that if you're trying to connect with them, saying like, hey, next time we talk, I want to talk about the Bengals. That'd be mine almost every time, except not now. It's painful. But, I want to talk about the Bengals. What do you want to talk about, right?
The Ohio is coming through.
Yeah, exactly. The Colts,
Yeah, the Colts.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's better.
We'll cut that out.
The 49ers. I'll just rep the West Coast, and nobody wants to talk about them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But that was very, very helpful. So I know that's a little off the technology thing, but coming up with a topic. And it was so funny because the first time I asked him, so what's your topic going to be? I can't remember what mine was. And he's like, mowing the lawn. I'm like, all right, we'll see what this is.
Sweet.
Turns out that he got home from work one day and he had been, just kind of ignoring his household responsibilities. So his brother and his brother's wife had gone over to his parents, hid his TV until he mowed the lawn and he could get it back. And he was really mad.
Oh, I bet.
And that got him talking. And I was like, I texted Tim. I was like, that was the best idea you gave me. So anyway, so the FaceTime and the topics ahead of time are very helpful. And then one other note on the technology is we touch on smart homes too in the book. And the independent living topic outside of high school is it's all over the board on whether or not it makes sense for, just the situational basis. But the technology of the smart homes it's really cool. If it's the right fit for that individual and for their family to be able to live on their own, like they got it locked down to where, as Cindy, the teacher I interviewed, said you couldn't burn the house down if you wanted to. You can't scold yourself in the shower. Like they have really good tools in place for that.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
I love.
Sounds like something I need to invest in.
Right. Yeah, there you go.
Scold yourself in the shower.
Exactly.
It's like, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, mess with the hot water heater dial, and you're in trouble. So my wife is a physical therapist, works with people with disabilities and the quads and paras and stuff like that. And so a lot of what you're talking about resonates with her and the community there. What we've noticed is just that people are missing that interaction with other people. And because sometimes they're just not as mobile. They can't get out and go do things like everybody else. And so I'm just glad that technology is coming along to where people can, at least through social media and other platforms, communicate. But nothing replaces the human interaction. Yeah. That human touch, the human interaction, the face-to-face conversations. It doesn't have to be all the time, but just, man, COVID really did it. Since COVID, things kind of got pushed. Everybody's ISO'd, and now people are just starving for it. And people that get injured and find themselves at home, they're alone a lot, or they have people with them that are just there to take care of them for a bit, but they're not really like family or friends or that old community. And so, I would just encourage everybody out there that's getting to hear this and to reach out to people that that are isolated like that, because there's a lot of mental health challenges, just even physical health challenges that come with that. And there's higher suicide rates, there's higher everything. And we could do more by reaching out to those people, even if it's just, going to take something over, a meal, or just go and sit with somebody for a little bit, a couple hours, and just talk. And what you're talking about is so important. It's like, what do you want to talk about? What's going on in your life? And actually having the empathy and then carving out time in our busy days. So maybe think about, instead of scrolling through your Facebook feed for 2 hours or whatever.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. It's
right.
proven to get you more depressed. Don't do that. Stop and call a friend, find that person that's like, you know what? Maybe I just need to go hang with them for a little bit, see what's going on. And that could be the one thing that keeps them going, because their situation is different than yours. If you're somebody that doesn't have a disability or special need, your situation is actually way better because you're mobile and you can move and you can hear and you can see and you can talk. So kind of stop putting yourself first and think about other people, and the world's going to be a better place because of it.
Yeah, you put that perfectly.
Amen to that.
That's
sorry.
No.
A soapbox, but seriously, I get fired up about it because, my brother and I, I just love him, and I wish I was closer to him, but because of tech, we can do it more. And if we were out on the West Coast, I'd be around him a lot. I mean, we were inseparable when we were growing up, and a lot of people don't understand what that dynamic is, don't expect them to, but at least, like, do you realize you can hear? Do you know that you, like, for this, my brother's example, I tell people, is like, listen, have you ever heard birds chirping? Yes. Have you heard a waterfall? Yes. Have you heard fireworks? Well, my brother doesn't. He feels them. So, like, part of my probably definite, I'll end up not being able to hear probably because in high school, I bought two 12-inch subwoofers with a 1100 watt amp, put it in my 1990 Jeep Cherokee Laredo in the back seat, mainly so that he could feel music and the beat of the music that I was listening to. And so we would just drive around the neighborhood blasting it as loud as we could.
The neighbors loved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
There were calls. Your son is driving, whatever. But it was just to see the joy on his face of doing that is just, it's a lifetime of just it makes me smile inside. And so he would put his hand up on the seat and just be like, yeah, all right. And just, and back then it was, Dre and Snoop Dogg and stuff like that. It's not like that anymore for us.
The moldy oldies.
Yeah, the oldies stuff that it creates the largest bass boom, But those are the things that are really cool.
So old,
Brent. The things that create the largest bass boom.
Yes. And
no, it's
rattle everything to where the car is it's license plates. That's what you hear. It's like bzzz of the license plate. It's so awesome. Yeah. So when I go, and I have to get close, like turn because I can't tell.
Yeah, I had to turn your headphones up.
Yeah, because
what's going on over there?
Yeah, I don't know. I know it's the same level as you guys, but I'm like, it's me. It's not you. It's me. Awesome. Do you? Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you would like to share with our audience and us?
Yeah, I think on that topic you were just touching on of reaching out, making sure that you stay in touch with people, especially if it's someone really well with special needs or disabilities. This was something that was really eye-opening to me when I met with Robert's parents. I've known them for a long time. They've become great family friends, but we'd never sat down. That was one of my favorite parts about this book is like we actually sat down and had very real conversations about this stuff.
Awesome.
And it was probably, I've been working on it for a couple of years now, so it was only a few months removed from actually kind of starting to get away from COVID and like everyone being, on lockdown. Mm-hmm. And Rob really struggled with that, as a lot of people did, but it was amplified for him. Yeah. And I felt like, when his dad talked about him losing touch with people after high school and whatnot, I was thinking, man, like my really good buddy, Zach, who I talked to quite a bit, I haven't talked to him in like a month. No big deal.
Yeah.
With Rob, it's like, what's wrong? Why hasn't that person, why hasn't Mitch reached out to me? And it's amplified on an emotional level. Yeah. So I just think it matters so much more. And that's kind of the last thkind of probably say.
Fantastic.
Any thoughts?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like giving like a shameless plug for Janus Developmental Services because
absolutely, it's a resource.
It's a solid resource, and what they do is they provide work opportunities for the special needs community. And I'll tell you, if you're looking for a place to get involved here in the Indianapolis area, especially up in Hamilton County, State Road 32, west side of Noblesville, right up on the south side of the road, and they not only like do like they run the coffee shop, the courthouse, they do all of these other great things, local manufacturing. They go out there, there's transport services and all kinds of stuff that Janus does for the community just in general. But there's they do commissioned art as well.
No kidding.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
I like that.
We did a lunch and learn there way back when I first started my job, and we went out there, and it was my first time being there. Had no idea what was going on. You get to interact. They have volunteer opportunities as well, and I saw this because Jacob, my oldest son at the time, he was like, I don't know, 3.
Yeah.
He was really into tractors, like farm equipment. Right. So, and there's just these beautiful canvases just hanging up on the wall, and there was a tractor sitting there. I was just like, I got to see if I can get that.
Yeah.
And then like the next time I went over there for like the lunch and learn the next year, we had my next son, Samuel. So I was like, well, he really likes ducks. There's a picture of a rubber ducky. I'm going to grab that one up. And it's just like these great ideas. So even if you want like a family portrait or something else, man, check out Janus. You can get awesome stuff there. And all the proceeds from their sales and stuff go directly to the individual who did the painting or did the carving or any of the things they do. It's really, really awesome. They do a great service.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that plug. That's awesome.
No.
Yeah.
But it kind of leads into another question. So are there any other, because you've been in the Indianapolis area for a little while, if someone wants to start getting exposure, they want to start getting out there and really begin working with the special needs community, do you have any other places where they might be able to do that?
Yeah, so I personally love Best Buddies organization, and they have I know they have chapters all over the place. Janus, you reminded me of, and I'm definitely going to look into getting involved with them as well to be able to volunteer. But I've volunteered and helped out with different walks that they've done. Best Buddies, that is. We did the one in Louisville 2 different times. That was when I was working in Lexington, actually. And that one is always really fun. And then I know Damar is another one that's really big in Indy that people could look into supporting. And I did have one other thought too. So another guy that I met with for the book, he was associated with our basketball program too. He essentially was a typically functioning person up until about 8th grade, and had some muscle issues, and then ultimately it was a form of muscular dystrophy that put him in a wheelchair.
Yeah, and
he has since gone on to just crush every aspect of life, and he's like the coolest guy ever. And awesome. He's starting a company that I will talk about in the book called Disabled 365, and I wanted to plug it in general.
Please do.
And the idea is non-medical transportation for individuals that are disabled. So when you talk about the ability to just, get out and interact with people, that was something that came up when I was talking with Rob's brother, where it's like, it's so hard for him because if I go back to Cincinnati and we go hang out with Rob. I was there this past weekend. We took him to Skyline Chili.
Sweet.
Yeah.
It's a polarizing place if you're not from Cincinnati. Some people either love it or hate it.
Right.
I mean, you can't ever put too much cheese on anything.
Okay, well, we have your take, which is fine. But, so I went there with, Maria and I picked him up and brought him back. But the whole point was just like, okay, we've gone out with him and had beers and stuff, but then it's like the reality of it is that you are then responsible for him, and he can't. It's tough for him to he can't really just get an Uber. His parents aren't really comfortable with that, so the idea is to be that service for those families, and that maybe it's. I think his idea was that maybe Rob would be assigned to like a geolocation so that it's the same 2 or 3 people that pick him up every time. Yeah. Because as much as there's, safeguards in place for Uber and Lyft, if I'm Robert's parents, I'm not comfortable with that. Right?
I agree.
And their job is just to drop him off. And that's what Erick Thompson, who's starting this, was talking about. It's like, our drivers would be responsible for that person to a different level, right? Yeah. It's not just, here's your destination, good luck. It's like, nope, I'm in the care of somebody or I'm taking care of somebody that's, that needs extra help. Yeah. So I thought that was something that's.
And what is it called again? That you
Disabled 365.
I love it. I love it. It is that's one of the questions we had is where are some gaps, and that's definitely a gap.
Yeah.
I see that with Nora and her population that she serves. It's a big gap.
Yeah.
So wow, man, figuring out that one will be interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, and he touched on that too. He's, that's
a logistical heavy lift.
And I think financial rules and regulations there. He's a saint for going after it and trying to make it work. But it's going to be amazing when he's got it up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting.
Well, that's something that state and locality should get behind quickly.
Totally. And figure out insurance for the driver.
Yeah.
And the patron. I don't know what else.
That's a good word. It's
the driver and the patron.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah, especially if you're in a geographic location that puts you at risk. If you're just dropped off and left there, and you need to get to the door or in the house or whatever, that may be interesting. Gets my wheels spinning right away. Yeah. I love it though. These are the challenges that we have to tackle as a culture and as humans to make life better for everybody. So what I like to do, we're towards the end of our time here, and I've really appreciated everything in this dialogue and conversation's been freaking awesome. So what I end with though is favorites. So what I like to do is go around to all the people talking, that includes you, Tom.
Oh, dang it.
About, I know you were
I thought I was going to be able to get away with this one. Wait, I did it on episode 9. Go back and listen to Foster and Friends episode 9. You'll hear my favorites. And that's how I'm going to answer all these questions.
That's right.
Because I forgot those favorites. I'm going to say something different.
And listen to Tom's podcast, Under the Sun. That's a plug for you. All right.
Thanks.
So start with you, Mitch. And then we'll go to Tom, and then myself. I'll end on that. And then, so what are your favorites? And what I mean by what are favorites, it's streaming. It could be movies, books, travel, upcoming events, stuff you do for fun, leisure, anything that's interesting that we might be interested in.
Okay,
Go
cool.
ahead.
So one thing I'm very passionate about is play-by-play commentary. So it was, alluded to earlier.
And the 2-2 pinch to Joey
If you're watching-
Votto.
Exactly.
If you're watching YouTube, you just saw my
Just a
face
bit
just make a
outside.
weird.
Yeah, so diehard Cincinnati fan, so I'll do some Twitch streams of that, and that's I kind of just do that for fun right now.
That's cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And then since you brought up streaming, Maria and I just finished Game of Thrones.
Nice.
And
Did you
it's-
like it?
I did. It's one of those things that, like, as I got into it, is like all of my best friends who I trust their opinion have been saying forever how great this is.
Yeah.
I don't know why it took me so long, but it's incredible. We got through that way too fast. For how long? It's like eight seasons, and I don't even want to comment on how fast.
That's just a weekend.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Far too invested, but I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it.
Okay.
I haven't,
Game of
so-
Thrones. I have not
Yeah.
seen it, so I'll have to check that out.
I hear good things.
Yeah, I hear good things.
Mitch really suggested that we watch it. So
Yeah, so we got to do it.
It's
We'll report
gory. It's
gory?
for sure. It's
Okay.
not family friendly. We'll put it that way.
Okay.
At all.
Eric's off screen
shakes his
going.
head like, no, don't watch it with the
Yeah.
kids.
Definitely not.
Yeah, Tom. Let's volley it over to you.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Which one do you want me to
Favorites. Whatever comes to mind.
answer? Oh, man.
You and Amanda, you guys streaming,
You see,
watching movies.
we've
kids.
been rewatching The Chosen again, which is just
Which season?
season 1.
Season 1.
Yeah, we're on season 1
Okay.
right now. It's just fantastic.
Isn't it?
The cinematography, the storyline, everything. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat.
Yeah.
But our guilty pleasure, it still remains The Office. I mean, that's like
Oh,
when we're looking like, man,
There's
the kids are asleep. We're both tired. Let's put on a random show, The Office, and we'll just pass out. But outside of that, I mean, it's September in Indiana, so it's like deer hunting, reduction zone, and all of that for me. As much time as I can spend in the woods this time of year, I'm there.
Awesome. I love it.
That's all I got.
That's all you got. Well, I wrote down actually The Chosen as well. That's one of my favorites. Well,
That's my notes.
I wrote it down. It's right here. It's on yours.
I've heard
Hey.
this a couple times.
Wait a minute. Yeah, you have.
But you know what? That's okay
Just noticed
because
it's on my copy, too.
I got a million favorites. No, The Chosen series. We're on. I think I've watched all 3 seasons twice.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for season 4. I'm just dying to see it. Now, I will tell you, Yellowstone. All right. So I watched 1883, then 1923, and then I need to go back and watch Yellowstone. So I just started one of the first episodes of Yellowstone. Already knowing the backstory of 1883, 1923, and now seeing the modern era of Yellowstone, man, killer. It's awesome. I love it. Rip's my favorite. I think that's a lot of people's favorite. Do you know what I'm saying? Have you seen Yellowstone?
No, I have not. I was going to ask about Chosen because I've heard a lot of people say good things. Where are we? Good. Netflix? We've got every single.
Actually, there's an app for Chosen.
There is an app,
and you can. It's actually free to download, and the way it's free to watch. Okay. You don't actually have to buy it. It's actually Dallas Jenkins. The way that they've done it is they're crowd fundraising to produce it.
Isn't it PureFlix?
Is it?
It might be PureFlix or something like that. I don't know.
There's an app you can download it on your phone and then play it from there, or you can put it on Apple TV and put the app on the TV.
Okay.
If you have Apple, I don't know where else
But not just that, but Angel Studios.
Angel Studios. That's
Angel Studios.
I was trying to think of that.
And they had another. a movie that just came out not too long ago with Jim Caviezel.
Yes.
Child trafficking and all that.
Sound of Freedom.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Sound of Freedom. And that one, I recommend everybody see that. Well, age appropriate scene.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that type of thing. But if you don't know what The Chosen is about, it's about Jesus and his disciples. And the way they portray it is amazing because it's not cheesy, it's not corny, it's not all that stuff. It's like Hollywood level, high, like really awesome. And then it just really adds personality to the character of Jesus and the disciples, how they were chosen, and then their path in following the Son of God. So
it essentially starts like at the beginning of you know, Christ's ministry, and then follows it through from, you know, Peter and
John,
little John,
Matthew,
Big John, Matthew, all
James.
that. So, and it's really cool just to see, because it paints, you know, because typically when we think about, you know, Christ, we think about, you know, high, lofty, very up there, but it brings that human element of, you know, Christianity and everything about it. Just, it really brings it home, and it's just a whole different way of looking at it that makes it more lifelike, more alive.
That's awesome. We're going to be getting on that soon.
Definitely. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you, Mitch, for being here. It's been a pleasure, man.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Tom, thanks for joining us, bro.
I
got to reach Erick, producer. Erick, great job. Zap, I don't know where he's at, but
he disappeared.
But just want to thank you guys. I want to thank you, the audience, for tuning in to Foster and Friends. It's just been a pleasure. Please go out, like, subscribe, do the thing that helps us grow, which is liking and subscribing. So if you don't know where to do that, you can do that on Apple, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can do it on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all that fun stuff, wherever it is. Push it out to your friends. Share with other people. What is the title of your book?
Yes, so it is Transcending Labels, The Power of Connecting with the Special Needs and Disabled Communities. And
where is it available?
Where can I get a copy?
Yep, so that would be Amazon. It's going to be officially out for release for like a paperback March 21st of next year. So it's actually National Down Syndrome Day.
Awesome. Good choice.
It is available for pre-order now. I've since been told that you're supposed to make that window a lot shorter, but I was coming on here, so I just put it out there.
Sweet.
So you can pre-order
awesome.
for $3 the Kindle version,
yes,
and kind of reserve it for when it does come out. So
awesome.
Fantastic.
Great. That is excellent. Go out and order that on Amazon, you guys. Help support Mitch and what he's doing. Just love the messaging that you've got going on, man. I just love it. It's great.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Okay. And that's a wrap. So that was just a warm-up. We're going to do it again.
No, that was good. That was good. I got to get back to my office.
Thank you.